Ethan Calder had never imagined he would stand at the gates of the Emperor's palace. The building was enormous, its walls gleaming like molten silver, stretching higher than the tallest human city tower. Ships from countless worlds hovered in the air above, their engines humming like a strange orchestra. Humans were rare here, and many aliens looked down on them as small, weak, and unimportant. But Ethan was a barber, not a soldier or a diplomat. He had come simply to ask for permission to open a small shop inside the Citadel, a tiny corner where humans could cut hair, even in the heart of the galaxy's greatest empire. The gate guards, tall and thin with 4 glowing eyes each, eyed him suspiciously. "Human," one said, his voice echoing like metal scraping against metal. "Why are you here?" Ethan swallowed and straightened his back. I want to serve the citizens of the Empire. Just a barber. No trouble." The guard laughed, a sound that rattled Ethan's chest. "Barber? Here? The Emperor does not care for humans. But, perhaps you may enter. Do not disappoint us." Inside, the palace was more magnificent than Ethan had ever imagined. The floors shone like liquid glass, reflecting light from hovering orbs that floated through the air. Alien nobles walked past him, dressed in flowing robes of metal thread and colors that seemed impossible to the human eye. Every sound, steps, whispers, wings, was amplified in the vast halls. Ethan's heart pounded as he followed a servant to the Emperor's throne room. The room was massive, filled with creatures of all shapes and sizes. Some had 6 legs, some had wings, some seemed made entirely of light. At the far end of the room, on a raised platform, sat the Emperor. His skin shimmered like polished obsidian, his eyes 2 pools of molten gold that seemed to look right through Ethan. Around him were several dragons, each larger than a human building, their scales sparkling with every color of the spectrum. But one small dragon drew Ethan's attention immediately. It was no bigger than a horse, with wings too small for its body and a dull, grayish color. The hatchling trembled as the Emperor's voice boomed across the room. "This creature is worthless," the Emperor said. "It cannot fly. It cannot fight. It will bring shame to my line. Leave it to die, for it serves no purpose." Gasps and murmurs filled the throne room. Some of the alien nobles nodded in agreement, others looked uneasy. Ethan felt his stomach twist. Something about the hatchling's trembling body and frightened eyes made his heart ache. He had never seen a dragon up close, but he knew courage when he saw it. Even in fear, the hatchling's gaze met Ethan's, almost as if it was silently asking for help. Ethan's fingers itched, not to draw a sword or fight, but to reach out, to do something. Anything. The Emperor's gaze shifted, and for a moment, it seemed he noticed Ethan standing among the crowd. "And you, human," he said, his voice cold as ice. "Why do you stare at my hatchling? Do you think it deserves your attention?" Ethan swallowed hard. His mind raced. He could lie. He could bow and look away. But something deep inside him refused. It's not worthless," he said quietly, his voice trembling but steady. "I can help it. I can make it stronger." The room went silent. Every alien turned to look at him. Some sneered, some laughed. The Emperor's eyes narrowed. "A human dares to speak to me?" Ethan took a careful step forward. He didn't know if the Emperor would strike him down, but he didn't care. "I may be human," he said, "but even humans know the value of life. You call it worthless, but you cannot see what it could become." A sharp laugh cut through the air, but the hatchling stirred slightly, lifting its tiny head as if understanding Ethan's words. Its wings twitched, weak but determined. Ethan's heart leapt. He saw not a worthless creature, but a spark of life fighting to survive. The Emperor's voice dripped with disdain. "You dare defy me in my throne room?" Ethan swallowed again, but he held his ground. "I only ask for a chance. A chance to help." For a long moment, the Emperor said nothing. Ethan could feel the weight of 1,000 eyes on him, the quiet expectation of what might happen next. Then, with a dismissive wave, the Emperor said, "Very well, human. You may touch the hatchling, but one mistake, and you will regret it for the rest of your life." Ethan's legs felt like jelly, but a small smile crept onto his face. He stepped closer to the dragon hatchling. Its eyes, wide and fearful moments ago, now glimmered with hope. As his hand hovered over its scaly head, Ethan realized something strange. This wasn't just about cutting hair or surviving in the Empire. This was about courage, about standing up even when everyone else said he was nothing. And somehow, in this moment, he knew the tiny, trembling dragon and he were bound together in something far greater than fear. And though neither of them knew it yet, this small act of bravery would begin a chain of events that could shake the Empire to its very core. Ethan's hand hovered over the hatchling, feeling the faint warmth of its small, trembling body. The dragon's scales were rough, almost like sandpaper, and it shivered beneath his touch. He whispered softly, though he knew the Emperor's eyes were still on him. "It's okay. I won't hurt you." The hatchling blinked, and a tiny hiss escaped its mouth. It was the smallest sound, but to Ethan, it sounded like a cry for help. He knew the creature needed care, not punishment. He glanced around the throne room, noticing the alien guards watching with suspicion. One false move, and they would strike. But Ethan's heart was set. He would not leave the hatchling to die. Over the next few days, Ethan found a way to stay close to the dragon. He had permission to visit under strict supervision, and he used every moment to groom it, feed it, and quietly teach it small exercises. He used his barber tools, scissors, brushes, and combs, to clean its scales and trim jagged edges from its wings. The aliens around him snickered at the sight of a human carefully brushing a dragon, but Ethan ignored them. He gave the hatchling a name, Kale. It was simple, easy to remember, and somehow it seemed to fit the small, determined creature. Kale began to respond to him. It lifted its head when Ethan spoke, followed his hands with its eyes, and sometimes even nudged his fingers with its tiny snout. Each small gesture felt like a victory to Ethan. But it was not easy. Kale was weak and clumsy. Its wings were uneven, its tail often knocked things over, and it fell more than it could stand. Yet Ethan never scolded it. He encouraged it. "You can do this, Kale. I know you can." And slowly, very slowly, Kale began to improve. One afternoon, a sharp noise echoed through the palace. A high-ranking alien guard had spotted Ethan working with Kale alone. He rushed in, shouting, "Human! You are forbidden to touch the Emperor's hatchling." Ethan froze, gripping Kale protectively. "I'm just helping," he said, his voice calm but firm. "I am not harming it." The guard narrowed his eyes. "You will be punished. This is disobedience." Ethan swallowed and looked at Kale. The dragon lifted its small wings slightly, almost as if it understood the danger. Then, in a quick moment of courage, Ethan stood taller. "I will not let it die," he said. "Even if the Emperor disagrees, I will protect it." The guard hesitated, unsure how to respond. Other aliens began to gather, whispering and pointing. In that tense silence, Kale did something surprising. The hatchling opened its mouth and exhaled a tiny stream of glowing energy. It was weak, barely enough to light the floor, but it startled everyone in the room. The energy pulsed like a heartbeat, and in that moment, something changed. The whispers grew louder, and the eyes of the onlookers shifted from Ethan to Kale. What the Emperor had called worthless now seemed promising. Even Ethan's hands trembled, not with fear, but with hope. Over the next week, Ethan and Kale trained in secret, using small rooms in the palace. Ethan taught Kale to control the energy in its breath, to move its wings without falling, and to trust its instincts. Every success, no matter how small, was celebrated. Every failure was met with encouragement. Slowly, Kale grew stronger, and its scales began to shine faintly, reflecting the light in the rooms. Ethan found himself changing, too. He had never been a hero, never fought in wars or led armies. But in caring for Kale, he discovered courage he didn't know he had. He learned to act quickly, think creatively, and stand firm in front of creatures far larger and stronger than himself. Word of their bond began to spread quietly through the palace. Some aliens scoffed at the humans' audacity. Others whispered about the strange power of Kale, the dragon the Emperor had declared useless. Slowly, curiosity replaced mockery. One evening, Ethan knelt beside Kale, brushing a knot from its wing. "You're not worthless," he said softly. "You never were. They just couldn't see it yet. But we'll show them, won't we?" Kale blinked and nudged his hand gently. Ethan smiled, feeling a spark of pride and determination. He knew that the path ahead would be dangerous. The Emperor would not forget a human daring to defy him. And Kale, though growing stronger, was still a hatchling, small, fragile, and untested. Yet for the first time, Ethan did not feel fear. He felt hope. Hope that even the smallest creature, even a human barber in a galaxy of tyrants, could make a difference. And in that hope, he found a courage he had never imagined. By the time the sun, or what passed for sun in the palace, set behind the silver towers, Ethan and Kale were no longer just human and dragon. They were a team. A small, unlikely team, bound by trust, care, and the courage to defy a world that said they were nothing. And though the Emperor had not yet noticed the growing power of Kale, or the determination of Ethan, the seeds of change had already been planted. Ethan had grown used to sneaking through the palace halls with Kale by his side. The little dragon moved quietly, wings folded, eyes alert. Every step they took was careful. The palace was full of guards, nobles, and spies who would not hesitate to report a human daring to touch the Emperor's dragon. Yet Ethan felt a strange excitement. He had never faced danger like this before, and the fear he once felt was now mixed with determination. One morning, a sharp command echoed through the corridors. "Human barber! To the throne room!" Ethan froze. His heart skipped a beat. The Emperor's voice was like thunder, and he knew it meant trouble. Kale hissed softly beside him, sensing the tension. Ethan took a deep breath. There was no running this time. When they entered the throne room, the Emperor sat in his obsidian throne, flanked by advisors and elite guards. His golden eyes were fixed on Ethan, cold and piercing. "You continue to meddle with what does not concern you, human," the Emperor said, his voice cutting like ice. "Do you think you can change what I have declared?" Ethan swallowed but held his head high. "I only want to help," he said. "Kale is not worthless. It can grow strong, and it can serve the Empire in ways you cannot yet see." A loud laugh erupted from one of the alien nobles. "This human has lost all sense. He speaks as if he knows more than the Emperor himself." Ethan ignored the laughter. He felt Kale stir beside him. The hatchling lifted its tiny head, eyes glowing faintly with the energy it had begun to control. Ethan placed a hand gently on Kale's shoulder. "Show them," he whispered. The Emperor's eyes narrowed. "Do it, human. Show me, and prove your foolishness." Ethan nodded. Kale took a deep breath, trembling at first. Then it exhaled a controlled stream of glowing energy. The light danced across the throne room, reflecting off the polished floors and walls. It was small, barely enough to light a corner of the room, but it moved with precision, curving around pillars and stopping just before the Emperor's feet. A gasp ran through the court. The alien nobles stared in disbelief. Even the Emperor's expression flickered, his golden eyes narrowing as he studied the display. Ethan felt a swell of pride. Kale had done what he had been training it to do, control its power and use it deliberately. The Emperor's voice was sharp now. "Interesting, but is this all it can do, human?" Ethan shook his head. "No. Kale is learning every day. It will become stronger. All it needs is guidance and care." The Emperor leaned forward slightly, a dangerous glint in his eyes. "And you, human? Do you truly believe that a creature like this will obey you? That it will follow your commands?" Ethan met the Emperor's gaze without flinching. "Kale follows me because I care for it, and it trusts me. Strength is not only in power, but in loyalty and understanding. Even the smallest creature can make a difference when someone believes in it. A tense silence fell over the throne room. The guards shifted uncomfortably. The nobles whispered among themselves. For the first time, Ethan felt the eyes of the Empire not just upon him, but upon Kale as well. Then, a guard stepped forward, suspicion in his voice. "This display, it is unnatural. Dragons cannot control energy like this. Perhaps the human has altered it?" Ethan shook his head. "No. Kale is learning, yes, but this is natural. You only needed to give it a chance." The Emperor's voice rose, full of fury. "Enough. You dare teach my dragon without permission? You flaunt your defiance in front of the court." Ethan squared his shoulders. "I do not flaunt. I stand for what is right. Kale is not worthless. And I will not let anyone, not even you, take that away." For a long moment, the Emperor studied him. Then he leaned back in his throne, his expression unreadable. "Very well, human. You have passed the first test, but do not think this is over. Every step you take with this hatchling will be watched. One mistake, and you will regret it." Ethan nodded, though his legs were trembling. Kale nuzzled his hand, sensing his resolve. Together, they had faced the Emperor's scrutiny and survived. The bond between human and dragon had grown stronger. As they left the throne room, whispers followed them. Some nobles shook their heads in disbelief, others stared in quiet admiration. Ethan knew that the challenge had only begun. The Emperor's anger would not fade easily, and the galaxy was full of enemies who would seek to exploit any weakness. But for the first time, Ethan felt something he had never felt before: hope. He and Kale had proven that even a human, small and underestimated, could face the greatest power in the galaxy and not break. And Kale, the hatchling once declared worthless, had begun to show the potential that even the Emperor could not ignore. Ethan smiled at Kale. "This is only the beginning," he whispered. Kale responded with a small hiss and a flick of its tail, as if agreeing. Together, they would face whatever came next. And though the Emperor's eyes still burned with suspicion, one truth had become clear in the palace halls: sometimes courage and loyalty were more powerful than size, strength, or status. And in a galaxy that had long underestimated humans, that fact could change everything. Ethan had grown used to moving carefully through the palace halls, but now every step felt heavier. The Emperor had watched Kale closely after the last display of power. Rumors of a human daring to train an imperial dragon had spread throughout the court. Some whispered admiration, others whispered fear. But none of it mattered to Ethan. He only cared for Kale, who had become more than a hatchling to him. The little dragon was now his companion, his student, and, in a strange way, his equal. One morning, the Emperor's command echoed through the palace: "Prepare the hatchling for immediate examination." Ethan's stomach twisted. He knew what this meant. The Emperor did not want Kale to grow strong. He wanted it tested, judged, and, if necessary, destroyed. Ethan gritted his teeth. He would not let that happen. Kale looked up at him, eyes wide and trembling. Ethan knelt beside the dragon, placing a hand on its head. "Stay calm," he whispered. "We face this together." The guards arrived to lead Kale to the examination chamber. Ethan stepped forward. "I am going with it," he said firmly. A guard sneered. "The human? You will only slow the process. Move aside." Ethan stood taller. "I will not leave. I will protect Kale." The guard laughed and reached for his weapon, but Kale growled, a low rumble that vibrated through the floor. Its wings twitched, crackling faintly with energy. Ethan stepped closer to Kale. "It's okay, Kale. You can do this." The chamber was cold and vast, filled with strange machines and hovering monitors. Alien scientists and soldiers surrounded them, eyes focused on Kale. The Emperor watched from a platform above, golden eyes glowing with displeasure. "Human," he said, voice sharp and cold. "Step aside, or you will regret it. Ethan did not flinch. I step aside only if Kale chooses to go without me. But I will not abandon it. The Emperor's expression darkened. You are a fool. But very well. Let the test begin. The scientists activated the machines. Energy beams scanned Kale's body, testing strength, intelligence, and potential. Kale flinched at the bright lights and strange sounds, wings folding against its sides. Ethan knelt beside it, speaking softly. Focus. Remember what you've learned. You are stronger than they think. At first, Kale struggled. Its wings flapped weakly, energy bursts sputtered and fizzled. The Emperor's gaze hardened. Worthless. Just as I said. This human's efforts mean nothing. Ethan's hands clenched into fists. He looked into Kale's eyes. No, he said firmly. We will show them. You are not worthless. You will prove it. Something shifted in Kale. It let out a determined hiss and lifted its wings higher. The energy it breathed this time was steadier, brighter, forming controlled arcs that curved around the chamber. The scientists gasped. Guards stepped back in surprise. Even the Emperor's expression faltered for a moment. Ethan encouraged it, speaking calmly but firmly. Yes, Kale. Focus. You can control it. Show them. The little dragon moved with surprising precision, dodging beams, striking targets, and using its energy to manipulate objects. Machines that had seemed impossible to control now responded to Kale's will. Every alien in the chamber stared in disbelief. The Emperor's golden eyes narrowed. Impossible. How can a hatchling do this? Ethan rose to his full height, heart pounding but mind clear. Because it is not alone, he said. Because it has me, and I have it. Even the smallest creature can be powerful with trust and guidance. Kale's energy flared brightly, illuminating the entire chamber. The Emperor stood abruptly, anger and astonishment mixed in his expression. Stop this, he roared. But Ethan did not stop. He stepped closer to Kale, raising a hand in encouragement. You are stronger than they ever imagined. Show them your courage. Kale responded instantly. It leapt into the air, wings spreading wide, energy blazing around its body. It struck the final target, a floating drone meant to measure power, and shattered it completely. The chamber fell silent. For the first time, even the Emperor was speechless. Ethan looked at Kale and smiled. You did it. You proved them wrong. The Emperor's voice finally returned, low and controlled. This human has trained my dragon. He has defied my command and shown courage that no one expected. Perhaps the creature is not worthless after all. Ethan's chest swelled with pride. Kale landed beside him, tail curling around his leg, scales shining faintly in the chamber's light. They had done it, not through violence, not through anger, but through trust, courage, and determination. Even in the heart of the Empire, in the presence of the galaxy's most powerful ruler, a human barber had defied expectations. He had stood for what was right, and his companion, once called worthless, had proven its power. As they left the chamber, whispers followed them. Some aliens nodded in quiet respect. Others stared in disbelief. But all had witnessed the truth: courage and loyalty could not be measured by size, species, or strength. Even a human, small and underestimated, could defy an empire. Ethan held Kale close as they walked through the palace. This is only the beginning, he whispered. They may not accept us yet, but together, nothing can stop us. Kale hissed softly in reply, as if understanding. The bond between human and dragon had grown unbreakable. And though the Emperor still ruled with an iron fist, one thing had changed. He now knew that the worthless dragon and its human companion were forces the Empire could not ignore. The Emperor sat in silence for hours after the test. The court had dispersed, leaving only a few whispering nobles and the guards who had witnessed Kale's display. Even the machines used to measure power had been damaged, destroyed by the dragon's precise energy. The word worthless had vanished from everyone's thoughts, replaced by cautious awe. Ethan stood beside Kale in the quiet throne room. The little dragon had grown stronger in a few weeks of training, wings wider, scales brighter, energy bursts more controlled. Ethan looked down at it, pride swelling in his chest. "You did it, Kale. They finally see you," he whispered. Kale nudged his hand, hissing softly in reply, the gesture of trust clear. The Emperor finally spoke, his golden eyes fixed on the two of them. "Human, Barber, you have done something no one has dared. You have taken my weakest hatchling and shown it can be more than I expected. Perhaps I underestimated you both." Ethan swallowed. The words were cautious, but it was more than he had hoped for. "Kale has always had potential," he said. "It just needed someone who cared to bring it out." The Emperor's eyes narrowed slightly. "You speak of care, loyalty, courage, qualities I have dismissed in your kind for a long time. Perhaps I was wrong to think humans are weak. Perhaps humans have strengths we cannot yet measure." A murmur ran through the remaining nobles. Some looked uneasy, others intrigued. Even the guards shifted, glancing at Ethan as if seeing him in a new light. He had become something more than a simple barber, he was now a symbol. Ethan knew their victory was small in the vast empire, but it was real. He had defied one of the galaxy's most powerful beings without violence, without a weapon, simply through courage and belief in what was right. And Kale had proven that even those deemed weak could change the course of events. Over the following weeks, the palace changed subtly. Aliens who had once mocked humans began to treat Ethan with respect. Some came to observe him teaching Kale, quietly asking questions about the little dragon's training. Kale thrived under the attention, growing stronger, more confident, and more skilled with every passing day. One evening, as the twin moons of the planet rose above the palace towers, Ethan walked with Kale on the palace terraces. He looked out over the sprawling city below, ships gliding between towers, lights glowing in colors he had never imagined. He thought about the galaxy beyond, about the worlds that had considered humans weak, insignificant, and unworthy. "They will never underestimate us again," he said softly to Kale. The little dragon nuzzled his hand, wings flicking in agreement. Together, they had shown the galaxy that courage, loyalty, and determination could defy even the greatest power. The Emperor summoned them once more to the throne room. This time, he did not shout, nor did he order punishment. He merely watched. "Human," he said, voice steady, "you have changed something here. The hatchling is no longer worthless, and you are no longer merely a barber. You have forced me to reconsider the value of life, strength, and loyalty." Ethan bowed slightly. "I only did what any human would do. I stood by what I believed in." The Emperor's expression softened, though it was still firm. "Perhaps the galaxy has more to learn from humans than I thought. Your courage has reminded me that strength is not only measured in power, but in heart." Ethan and Kale left the throne room that day, walking through halls filled with whispers and glances of respect. Everywhere they went, the story of the human barber and the once worthless dragon spread. Across the empire, those who had doubted humans began to reconsider, some quietly, some openly. Ethan realized then that their journey had only begun. Kale would grow stronger, and humans would continue to face challenges in a galaxy that often overlooked them. But the first step had been taken, and it was a step that no one could take away. One night, Ethan stood on a balcony overlooking the city, Kale perched on his shoulder. The stars stretched endlessly above, a reminder of the worlds waiting beyond. "We did it, Kale," he whispered. "We showed them that even the smallest, the weakest, can make a difference." Kale let out a soft hiss, wings twitching in agreement. And in that quiet moment, Ethan understood something deep and powerful: the galaxy did not belong to the strongest, the largest, or the most feared. It belonged to those who dared, who cared, and who refused to accept the limits imposed on them. From that day forward, humans and dragons alike spoke of Ethan Calder, the barber who defied an emperor, and Kale, the dragon who was never worthless. their story became a symbol, a spark of hope in a galaxy that had long forgotten the value of courage. The Emperor watched from his throne, quietly observing as his once dismissed hatchling soared through the palace courtyard, energy streaming brightly from its wings. And though he remained proud of his empire, he knew one truth he could not ignore: a human's courage had changed everything. Ethan smiled, looking at Kale. Together, they had proven that the smallest beings could cast the longest shadows, and that sometimes, hope, loyalty, and courage were the most powerful forces in the universe. And as the stars glittered above, the galaxy itself seemed to lean in, listening to the story of a human barber, a dragon, and the courage that refused to be ignored.